Whoever that is. Who is that person? Who said that? Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very nice. Even though she disturbed my chain of thought. That kind of a disturbance we don't mind, right? But when I was president, Iran was in total check. The Iranians were starved for cash. Nobody was buying their oil. And they were ready to make a deal. They wanted to make a deal. They wanted to do something. And terrible thing. You know, we got more votes in the second election. As you know, we had 2016, 2020. We got millions and millions more votes the second time. And they missed by just a little sliver, right? They said, somebody said like 18, 19,000 votes. It's just a disgrace. They're not going to be able to do that a second time. They're not going to be able to do that a second time. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made Iran rich in a very short period of 3.5 years. They have $300 billion now. They're rich. I mean, they pay $6 billion every time they have if they have somebody that was kidnapped. It's always $6 billion. Who ever heard of that? Somebody else gets like $4,000. How much you want? Give me $2,000. You have anything? $6 billion. It's always $6 billion. With Russia, it was $6 billion. And they also got back their spy, the greatest spy, they say perhaps. He was a spy, but he was really more of an arms merchant. And the greatest arms merchant, the greatest buyer of military equipment, they say anywhere at any time. They got him back, but we got our basketball player back. That was the trend. Well, that is true. She used to tie her sneakers during the national anthem, right? And we got her back, and they got the best. And I'm not saying he's a nice human being, but he was the #1 arms dealer in the world for a long time. But Iran was on the verge of bankruptcy. They had no money left. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah, the people they're fighting now. They would have been willing to make any deal. You could have made any deal, but Kamala flooded them with American cash. And even now, I mean, they're flooding them with cash. It's honestly, it's not even believable. It's like men and women's sports. It's not believable. It's like open borders. Why would they want an open border? You know, it's so stupid. We're the party of common sense, by the way. We are the, I like to say it all. Forget conservative, yes. But, you know, we're the party of common sense because it's really more common sense than anything else. We want borders. We want fair elections. We want honest elections. And if you don't have those two things, you don't have a country, really. And we don't have a border. We had, coming into our country in the last 3.5 years, more than 21 million people. And many of those people were people you do not want to have in your country. And we'll discuss that in a couple of seconds. But ever since Iran has been exporting terror all over the world, and it's been just unraveling. The whole Middle East has been unraveling. But, of course, the whole world has been unraveling since we left office. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. This would have never happened in the Middle East. It wouldn't have been on October 7th. You wouldn't have had inflation. You know, we'll go to a different topic. You wouldn't have had inflation. None of these things would have happened. How about Afghanistan, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, in my opinion? Not that we're getting out. I would have gotten out. We were going to get out with dignity and strength, but they get out at the most embarrassing. People falling 3,000 feet off airplanes. The whole thing was bedlam. We lost 13 great soldiers. I got to know their families. And a lot of people, you know, they never talk about the people that lost their arms, their legs, their face. They obliterated. And hundreds of people died. Hundreds of people died that day on the other side, because I count the other side too. But hundreds of people, gross incompetence. You don't take the military out first, let's put it that way. He took the military. Remember, a year ago, I brought a young boy who was 5 years old, took him out of the audience. I gave him a quick little study. And I said at the end, so now you know everything about the event. Do you take the military out first or last? He looked at me, you take the military out last, sir. The kid was 5 years old. But we took the military out first, and that's when it came. That was what happened. You know, for 18 months, not one, under my administration, 18 months, not one soldier was shot at. Not one soldier in Afghanistan was killed. And, well, I talked to the leader because they were killing a lot of our soldiers with sniper fire, and they were killing a lot of our soldiers. And during the Obama-Biden administration, and I called the head of the Taliban, because it's the Taliban that really, and they said, how come you're calling him, the press, the fake news? Look at all of them. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of cameras. But I called his name, Abdul. I said, Abdul, you're not going to do this anymore, Abdul. Anyway, it's a long story. They said, why would you call him? I said, because that's where the problem is, with Abdul and with the Taliban. And it's like Jesse James. He said, Jesse, why do you always go after banks? Why do you rob banks? He said, because that's where the money is. Pretty simple story, right? But that's where the problem was. And since that time, 18 months, we didn't have one soldier killed or even shot at, not one soldier. But they took the military. When they took over, they took the military, and then all hell broke loose. These people are grossly incompetent. And now we have them in charge of potentially World War III. And World War III is going to be like no other if it happens, because of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction like nobody's ever seen before. I know because I rebuilt our military. I rebuilt it. It needed it. And I hated rebuilding that, but I rebuilt that too because we had no choice. But Iran had no money when I was in charge. They had a lot of money when I started. They had no money when I finished. And now they have $300 billion and another $300 billion from their wholly owned subsidiary, Iraq. It's a wholly owned subsidiary. They probably don't like it when I say that, but that's true. Iraq doesn't like it. But they have $300 billion also from oil. Remember, I used to say, don't go into Iraq. Don't do it. To Bush. Don't do it. Don't go into Iraq. But they went into Iraq. Then they were there. I said, all right, you're there. Keep the oil. Just keep the oil. Remember I used to say, keep the oil. You know, Iraq has more oil than almost anybody. It's like massive. But they didn't keep the oil. And they have hundreds of billions of dollars right now. Under my administration, we had no war in the Middle East. We had no war in Europe. We had harmony in Asia. We had no inflation. We had no Afghanistan catastrophe. Instead, we had peace, peace, peace. We had a lot of peace. Think of it. The only war we had was ISIS. And I went to ISIS. I wanted to see what the hell was going on. I went to Iraq. I flew there late at night, middle of the night. I landed and spoke to a lot of great people. And I spoke to a general. Raisin Cain, you know that story. I won't go into it, but Raisin Cain, General Raisin Cain, a real general. And these aren't like the guys you see on television. These are the real generals. We have unbelievable military. Believe me, we wiped them out in 4 weeks instead of 5 years.